Hello, my health freedom loving friends. Misty Carlfeld here with Health Freedom Idaho. I'm here with Chris Boyd and really getting to know him for the first time right along with you. So thank you for joining me, Chris.
Oh, thank you, Missy. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm excited to get to know you. We talked briefly on the phone, and you came highly recommended from a friend in your voting district. So I'm excited to have other people get to know you. And you are running for district attorney in Canyon County, right?
Yes, Canyon County Prosecuting Attorney.
Yes, Canyon County prosecuting attorney.
Yep.
And you're running against Greg Cheney.
Yeah, he's running against me.
I love it. Well, I have so many stories to share about Greg Cheney, but first, why are you running?
Well, I'm a career prosecutor. I chose to be a prosecutor because I grew up. I grew up here in Idaho, in southeastern Idaho, actually, and my mom was a victim of abuse. So I grew up with her kind of being a survivor of that, and that kind of just gave me a desire to fight for victims. Like I really just wanted to get justice. So that was always kind of something that just kind of drove me. And I went to law school. I didn't go to law school to become a lawyer. I went to law school to be a prosecutor. I mean, I always knew that's what I wanted. And so, I started out my career here in Canyon County, prosecuting everything from murder cases down to DUIs and domestic violence cases, all that kind of thing. I've done over 50 jury trials myself personally. I have over a decade of prosecuting experience, so thousands of prosecuting cases. And after I worked, I lived in Middleton for about 5 years, and then after that, I left and went to Adams County, where I was the elected prosecuting attorney of that county for 6 years. And so, and moved back to Nampa in January. So, because the current incumbent is not going to run again, and this is my kind of my home in the sense of like the career and the family, the law enforcement family that's here. So you'll find that people like Sheriff Kieran Donahue have endorsed me, along with people like Raul Labrador. So very different kind of political sides of the aisle, but it's people who know my work, and they've worked with me for years. And so that's why I do what I do, and that's why I'm here.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, you have a vast history of this work, and you told me a fun fact. And let me make sure I got this right. Greg Cheney has never prosecuted a case.
Not one case, not even an infraction. So he's running to be the leader of an office that it has is almost tied in terms of volume with Ada County in terms of how much criminal work it does. And it's the second biggest prosecuting agency in the state. He's got less experience than an intern, running for that office. He's not really qualified to be a felony attorney, but he wants to be in charge of them, which is kind of, yeah, I think to normal people and people who might even like him on a political level. Many of those people are deterred by the fact that he's just got no experience to do the job. And this is not, I think it's almost disrespectful, because it's like presuming that prosecution work is for idiots, or like it's simple or something. It's the kind of, I mean, we have the highest burden of proof. Like, we have to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt. We have totally different ethical standards. We run through hearings that defense attorneys never even see, although Greg, I don't think it's done very much criminal work at all anyway, but it's the kind of job where you really couldn't do it well unless you knew it, right? Unless you really understood like what can go wrong in all these different circumstances. And so you can't properly protect people's rights. You can't properly supervise attorneys that know everything when you know really nothing about the work.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'm going to share a little bit of my experience with Greg Cheney, just so people understand who he is. Not only is he totally unqualified, it sounds like, there have been people who've wanted to get him out of office for a long time because he used to be a legislator. And so this defeatgregcheney.com, to my understanding, has been around for a while. There's a lot of information here if people want to read it all. I'm going to sort of focus on my experiences with him. But there's a lot here, in everything from how he treats women to what his mom had to say about his state of mind, which actually really made sense with my experience with him. When I read that letter from his mom, I was like, yeah, that makes sense with what I'm actually experiencing with Greg Cheney in real life. And here's some of his posts, so you can see what his actual thoughts are. My understanding is there's some posts, and this is how it applies to health freedom, is really telling people to get masks and vaccines. Is that right, Chris?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I mean, I've been shown some by some people. I haven't really focused a lot of effort looking at this site myself. I think this predates my campaign, but
Yeah.
that's my understanding.
Yeah, that's because people were already wanting to get him out of office, which Canyon County did. They got him out of the legislature, and I don't think they plan on voting him back in. So now he's trying some other route to have some authority, which that's why I want to do this interview. I want Canyon County to understand who he's been in the legislature and what that might look like as a prosecuting attorney in your county. And also to let you know that you've got Chris Boyd as an option, so you can make sure that Greg Cheney is not your prosecuting attorney. We cannot endorse, but I can say that you do not want this man. I'll show you. Here's some examples. Okay, let's see. I'm going to move this over here. Here's some examples. So, oh my gosh, where do I even begin with this man? Let me back up before 2021. In 2020, we had an executive session, and that executive session was our hope in ending the tyrannical state of emergency from the governor. When we were there, I was up at the front in where the journalists would be, and I was broadcasting for a national network along with our local social media. So I had been sitting there for several days, and Greg Cheney asked me to move. He asked me to move from my seat. Nobody else was wanting that seat. I wasn't in anybody's way. And I also, pay my taxes and own it's my capital, right? So he wanted me to move. He asked me to move, and I said that I would not move. So he said, I'm going to call upon my friends in the back, referring to the police, the Capitol Police. And they came and asked me to move, just doing his bidding. And I asked on what grounds he could have me moved. It's up to the chairman. They said it's up to the chairman. So he's exercising this authority as chairman to remove someone, me, from the front because he doesn't like me, because I make posts like this about him, exposing the way he would be a chairman and run his committee, and the posts that he would make and the things that he would say and do at the Capitol. So he used that opportunity to bully me and used the Capitol Police to participate in that. That was actually the day Ammon Bundy got arrested in that chair. And I'm not sure if you guys are familiar when you saw him get rolled out in the chair. That was that day because he came and occupied that space that I was removed from, really in protest of what had just taken place. It really grosses me out that he would call upon his friends in the back and have the Capitol Police participate in him bullying somebody in his committee. And this is another thing that I think was kind of bullying, is he had H 195, this bill that would have kept the people from being able to protest outside of elected officials' homes. And when he brought this bill, he used this image, and he compared people who were trying to stand up for their rights regarding not being forced vaccinated or forced masked. He used the analogy, compared them to Nazis. He compared people to Nazis. He said that people defending their liberty are comparable to Nazis. This is what I put on my post on Misty for Liberty. I said, does he just have a misunderstanding of history, or is he so drunk on the idea of power that he can't see straight? So, Chris, I want to give you the opportunity to speak to that time regarding masks and regarding vaccines. Are you pro-choice on these things, or do you think that the government has the right to tell people what they should do with their bodies?
Yeah, thanks, Misty. I don't know about all that happened. What you're telling me is the first time I'd actually heard that those details before. So, I mean, I find that a little bit worrisome and troublesome. But let me just tell you, let me just focus in on what I did during that time period. 2020 was, of course, crazy, as you all remember. People losing their minds with fear. Fear makes people do things that may not be right, may not be the right decision. Um, the governor came out with his lockdown order, locked everybody down, and then people sometimes forget that as part of that, he also requested that prosecutors prosecute the people who don't obey the order with a misdemeanor from a health and welfare statute. I looked at that and I thought, I can't do that. That's here's the problem. I mean, there's no exception in here for going to church. There's no exception in here for all your different constitutional rights. And I'm just not, I mean, aside from the statutory problems, right, with re-extending a 30-day order over and over again, which on its face is a problematic kind of position to take. But aside from that, the government has a limitation on the things that it can do. That's what the Constitution is. It's a limitation on what you can do. And so the government is not allowed to tell people they can't go to church. It's just simply not allowed to. And you're not allowed to suspend the Constitution. There is no suspension of the Constitution clause. So I was really troubled by this. I sent a letter to the governor. It got me a lot of infamy or I don't know. It was a hard time. I got death threats. People were very, very scared. But I just stood up and said what I believed was right. It wasn't because I had an axe to grind against the governor or anybody else. It was just more of, this is me calling balls and strikes. And I think it's not enough for me simply to not prosecute, which many prosecutors told me they were not going to prosecute. But I thought it was more important that I needed to stand up and do something more and say publicly, this cannot stand. We cannot prosecute this because it's a violation of people's constitutional rights. So I did that. That was received, again, at the time, that was really tough. There was a lot of people really afraid. I think that history ended up vindicating me for the most part in that position. And but I was just doing, I wasn't looking for fame or any of that kind of stuff. I just wanted to do what was right in my heart and what I knew the Constitution said. And so that's why I did that. The other thing that I did was there was, if you recall, during the heyday of Biden tyranny, essentially, he tried to force people to take the shot by pressuring companies and saying you won't get any federal contracts with us if you do not force all of your employees to take this shot. And that really, look, it's a violation of people's bodily autonomy rights. Those rights come from God. They don't come from the government. The government, though, is prohibited from regulating those in that particular manner. And there was just it was just beyond the pale. Can you imagine in the United States of America, we're going to say you can't work if you don't make this particular medical decision? It's crazy, right? That was nuts. And so to their credit, some legislators in the state legislature tried to go out and do what other states had done. Montana is the one that comes to mind, that they put out a statute that said, no, it'll be a crime for anyone to discriminate against anybody else on the basis of vaccine status and those health decisions. And that did not pass. At the time, there was a total shutdown from the top on the government side. I'm sure you well remember it. But in my county, Little Adams County, where we lived, it didn't happen because I authored a county ordinance and I made it a misdemeanor. It was three very courageous commissioners who passed that. I authored it and wrote the preamble, and I kind of copied it, of course, from other states who had gone before. So I can't take all the credit, but we put that out. And I'll say that people who you wouldn't think, people who are kind of like, they were the mask wearers, they were the kind of liberal kind of people, and I wouldn't have thought that they'd be the people to tell me this, but they were. They called me up from these bigger companies within the county, and they said, thank you. They're like, thank you. Thank you, because it took it off their plates, and now they didn't have all these really rabid people on one side saying fire them, fire them, fire them, and even they didn't want to fire those people. So it was very, and you mentioned comparing to Nazi Germany, but in reality, how does an entire country ever put up with something as ludicrous as killing a bunch of people? Well,
Right.
I mean, you're going to get to a point previously where you were willing to throw them out of work first, right? And I would just point that out, not because I think that it was the same thing by any means, but I
Right.
do think that we're on a path that we should historically recognize as that was scary. We
Yeah.
should never go down that path again. We look back at the days of the Japanese internment camps and with shame and disgust for what we did, and we should look back on the COVID time and what was done there with the same kind of shame.
Yeah. Right. Oh man, I absolutely agree. You're saying all my favorite words: bodily autonomy, constitution. I'm just over here, hearts for days. Oh my goodness. And
Well,
so
I'm glad we agree on this one. That's good.
that is good. So what do you think about that? Being able to redress your grievances outside of elected people's homes. We haven't talked about this before, but I would really like to pick your brain on this because it did happen during COVID, because they were taking their meetings, specifically at Central District Health, they were taking their meetings at home, for example. And so it's like, how do you redress your grievances if you can't go to the meeting? They won't let you in if you don't wear a mask. And then they're not even there anyway, and they're taking the meeting, from home. So anyway, I'd love to see what you think about a bill like H-195 that he had that would have made it illegal to be able to redress your grievances or peacefully protest in front of an elected person's home.
Well, let me start with the fact that I'm not a legislator and I've never been one. My job is enforcement of laws, and I will not enforce unconstitutional laws. But this is the kind of thing that I think that the Supreme Court has allowed states to regulate. So I think that they can, under this, whether or not you agree with the Supreme Court or not, that's been their interpretation. And so I think as a lawyer, I have an obligation to relay that interpretation. So. I mean, my job is pretty limited away from those kind of legislative priorities. I have some mixed thoughts about it. I think that the situation you just described is kind of like, well, what else do you do to redress your grievances? Mm-hmm. But I also have, I have concerns about people's families being involved in that process. Sure. I feel like that they as public figures definitely have you should have the right to make them be criticized and feel criticized, right? I certainly have felt that myself over the years. So I think that that's part of it, but you've got to balance that against the rights of families, people who did not sign up, kids who did not sign up to be part of that debate. And they're, I do worry about them being, I don't know how effective it is, Misty, to be honest, going to people's homes, because I think that in the end, that might turn more public opinion against you than it does help you, I'm not, but on the other hand, I get the point too. Like, where are you going to go if they're refusing to even open up any of the meetings, and you can't get the opportunity to go to these public places where that sort of thing really is blatantly appropriate, Yeah. So I guess I'm sorry if that sounds like an I don't know answer, but maybe I'm just not that smart,
No.
There's some competing interests here that are real,
Yeah, that's really the debate. That's really the debate and the discussion which you just had with yourself in the moment.
First I thought of it, so.
And off the cuff, which I absolutely appreciate. It's not the easiest thing in the world. It needs thought through. Anyway, I do appreciate what you said about constitutional laws, and that's really the heart of it, is looking at laws and are they constitutional. And I appreciate that that's the lens that you will view your job with when you're elected. So how is your campaign going anyway? How's it going out there in Canyon County?
It's awesome. And what really heartens me is I just got through my 30,000th flyer, I guess, that's going door to door. And people are I didn't hand out one of those. Those are precinct committee people. There are people who aren't even precinct committee people who are just going and knocking doors and just handing those out. So the grassroots level, we may not have as much money kind of as the big the big dogs on the block, but what we do have is grassroots involvement, and I think we're doing awesome. Like, it's the feedback I get is just resoundingly positive, and there are a few people who are always going to be in the tank for their guy, but I think there's a lot of those folks. Even I'm endorsed by Sheriff Kieran Donahue, and we may not see eye to eye on every political topic, but he knows my work. He knows I can prosecute, and he wants I mean, give him credit. Give him absolutely credit for caring more about the job than politics, because otherwise he probably would have gone for the other guy if it was just base politics. But he really does care about the safety of the people in the community in Canyon County. So sorry about that. Did I
Awesome.
freeze?
No, just a little bit. I think
Okay.
that's a fair evaluation. I appreciate that. And AG Raul Labrador, he endorsed you.
Sorry about
also.
that. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay. Can you say that again? Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure. AG Raul Labrador, he also endorsed you. And so what brought that about? I saw a picture of you guys. I think you had an event last night with him. What brought that about? What is it that you guys connect on?
So I've known Raul for about 10 years, and I have always been a supporter of his because he's been an honest politician, which is really hard to say to someone's an honest politician. It's rare, and it's really rare. And I have people that I have high hopes for, and then they dash them, and then all that kind of thing. But he's a guy who went to Congress and came back, and he wasn't wealthy. He's still not wealthy. He didn't get rich off of backdoor deals. He's a guy I've always just kind of really admired for his honesty and his straightforward kind of demeanor. I've always had that for him, and I guess so. When he ran for the Attorney General's office, I think I was the only elected prosecuting attorney who endorsed him for that job, which is understandable. Everybody knew Lawrence Wasden, and I didn't have any kind of distaste in my mouth for the guy. But I was really excited for Raul to get in and actually start championing some of those cases up to the Supreme Court, which he's done a very good job of. And he's brought in. Look, it's rough to take over an office and start from or kind of restart it, I guess, from some folks that are maybe not as happy as others might be. But he's done such a good job, and so I've worked some cases. I've helped him with I represented him briefly on a case related to health and welfare, and then I don't work with him on this special prosecution case that I've got, but I took it over from his office, and so he owes me, darn it. I'm doing a lot of work, and I don't get paid extra to do that kind of special prosecutions work. That's just purely on the same salary you always get. So it's a lot of extra work, but I think that he's just known me for a long time. He knows that I'm a good prosecutor. He's seen me do the work, and I really appreciate him. I mean, it couldn't come from someone whose opinion I value more, you know?
Well, that's great. I mean, we here in Ada County, he was on the Central District Health. And once we got him on there, everything really kind of started changing for Ada County during the whole COVID nonsense. I don't know if you know this, but Idaho law says that health districts can do all things in the name of public health, right? And so it was really important. I mean, Health Freedom Idaho has brought a bill a couple of times to change that to necessary and reasonable things rather than all things. And we can't seem to get that passed. We'll try again next year. But that's what.
Have you thought about a lawsuit at any point about that?
I haven't. I'd love to pick your brain about that.
Well, I just wonder, and this is me spitballing, but I just wonder if that's an overbroad delegation of legislative powers. Because if you say all things, and I know that the language you're referencing, because Vicki Purdy was one of my commissioners, and she was in Southwest District Health, so I remember dealing with that a little bit, and I always have wondered if the courts would really find that to be constitutional, given the breadth of the delegation of responsibilities. You can't delegate essentially. You can't usurp all of the legislative powers to an executive power. So it'd be interesting to see whether or not that could be well argued in front of the Idaho Supreme Court.
Oh man, yeah, I'd love to talk to you some more about that, because that it really is a problem, and we were so grateful to get Raul on the board there with Central District Health and be able to kind of help us. But without that, I think a health district can totally run amok under the do all things law.
Yeah, Vicki Purdy really, and she took a lot of flack for it, and I kind of had to jump in and defend her at some points. But she was at Southwest District Health. She was from the county I was representing, at Adams County at the time, and she is the reason why there were no mask mandates. She is the reason. So that tenacious little lady just fights like heck for what she believes in, and she would not bow down. She would not just kind of go along to get along. Sometimes it's important to be nice to people, but it's more important than being nice is doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love Vicky Purdy. She is absolutely a fireball. I just enjoy her spirit so much on phone calls. Oh, I'm always reinvigorated after having a conversation with her.
Yeah, she's great.
Well, is there anything else you want to add? I mean, Canyon County is doing a great job, from what I can tell, really working to keep good, liberty-minded people elected in different positions. I have to say, during the COVID thing, I did most of my shopping in Canyon County because I could easily go and shop without, and thanks to Vicky Purdy, I go and shop without, feeling like I was going to get into a brawl for showing my face.
Yes. And that's so true because and it really gave me heart that I wasn't. So I may have been the only prosecutor that publicly said I will not prosecute people for this lockdown order, but I wasn't the only entity, because Nampa City refused to do that, and they said, "Well, we are going to direct our police officers not to do that. We're not shutting anybody down. None of that." That was Nampa City, the biggest city in Canyon County, and God bless them. They're amazing. God bless them. They're amazing, So,
Yeah.
and it makes you feel like, you're not alone. You're not an island. You're not just some lunatic. You're just standing up for what you believe is right. And yeah, it's great to see good people standing up. And there are so many of them in Canyon County.
I was really hoping that that the numbers would. Nobody's come out with it, but I was hoping that the numbers would show that more people were shopping there, and they'd be like, "We're really making great money over here in Canyon County, while you guys are losing money in Ada County." But I never actually saw anybody come out with that. But I know I spent a lot of my dollars over there.
Yeah. Oh, I hope they made lots of money. I don't know what their
I do.
stats are, but
Yeah, it'd be awesome if somebody would come out with that. Well, in closing, I'm just going to show people kind of some of
oh,
the other.
sorry. Hold on.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. Are you there?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry. Go ahead.
In closing, I'm gonna show people just some other posts that I made on Misty for Liberty and Telegram about Greg Chaney, and because it lets you know some of the things that were also important to him. Like, he was really wanting to bring the metadata center. He was a part of that. He sponsored H521 in 2020, which opened the door to the data center. So that's something you should know about that. And then there was a whole YouTube, Greg Chaney was a bad decision and must be stopped. So if you want to go find out more about him, Stop Idaho Rhinos has a website and has information about him, so you can easily check that out. And then last election, people were really talking about the Bedkey bunch, because these were sort of the people doing Bedkey's bidding at the Capitol. So you can see, for a long time, people have been talking about the problem that Greg Chaney has been. I would really hate to see him become anything out in Canyon County, because I think Canyon County deserves better. And I just really wanted everybody to meet Chris Boyd and see the absolute opposite kind of representation you'd have there in Canyon County, and a district attorney, somebody who actually has some experience and really seems to love your job, Chris. I love that about you.
Oh, thanks. I mean, it is the best job in the world. It's a privilege to fight for people. I mean, it really is. Every time I get to go to court and just fight for some victim of crime, and I get done, there's nothing quite like it. It's just a great privilege to be able to do it. And you guys fight for me, I will fight for you, and I'll fight for your freedoms, but I'll fight for you on your darkest days if you're victims of crime. And we'll be there, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish.
Oh my goodness, Chris. I love that. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you for running. I hope that people really get to work out there in Canyon County. Where can they find information about you, Chris?
Thanks. You can go to boydgetsjustice.com, boydgetsjustice.com, and all the information you need. And if you don't mind sending me a 20 or something, nobody has a ton of money this time of year, but if you send me a little bit of money, I'll put it to good use, and we'll get elected on May 21st.
Well, that sounds like an awesome website. All right. I'm going to add a link in the description of this video. Thanks, Chris.
Misty.
Have a great day.
Appreciate you.
Bye, everybody. Bye for now.